All right. Well, we are so excited, aren't we, Pam Smith?
We are so excited, Jennifer Bushman. Can you believe it? We're on together talking about our favorite subject.
Our favorite subject. I mean, from salmon farming to eating fish and seafood to these accomplishments that Quarry Arctic has made. And it is so fascinating to me, kind of the misunderstanding. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. You and I've talked a lot about fish farming, and we can talk about the rearing and how this happens and why it's so important, because really it's you are what you eat, and you are, how you're raised. The exercise you get is ultimately going to be how healthy you are. And I think that but we've been listening to these recommendations about eat more fish and seafood. You need your omega-3s. I think people just were sort of taking that just as okay, fine, I'll do it. But they didn't really realize, they understand why they need it, but they don't really realize where it comes from and sort of the how. So when we started to have this conversation inside Quarry Arctic, and some were more knowledgeable than others, there was some really surprising kind of aha moments about omega-3s and how we get them. So frame this up for us, because you're the expert.
Well, again, it's true. We talk about omega-3s in salmon. We talk about the incredible feat that Quarry Arctic has been able to really build those omega-3s through the feed, through the way that these salmon are reared, into the highest level of omega-3 in any Atlantic farm salmon or wild salmon. But again, it's this mystical notion of, well, what makes it omega-3? And you're right, we had quite a few people that said, wait, where do you get the omega-3 in salmon? And it's like, well, omega-3 it's not in the fat, it is the fat. And that's a very aha kind of moment to many, because as we've talked about for years, kind of the public opinion was anything that's fat should be avoided. Anything that's fatty should be avoided.
Cut off the fat, cut off the belly meat, and I think it is that notion. If I eat a steak, I trim the fat. If I'm having a conversation with you about chicken, you're going to tell me to eat the chicken breast, take the fat and the skin off. And, and so I think that this is so important. And where I want to start with is this, because if we're going to tell people to eat the fat, then they have to have something that is a framework and understanding. And so when we talk about the fat in fish versus the fat in meat, if they had a steak or they had a burger or they had chicken, tell us the difference proportionately to fat in these proteins. And then let's dive into, well, then I can eat the belly meat of the salmon and get that great rich omega-3.
Exactly. And it's being able to kind of defy that myth that fat is public enemy number one. And instead, and we just recently published a blog about this on the Quarry Arctic website, Quarry Arctic blog, and that is that all fat is not created equal. Some are beneficial, some are detrimental, and it's important to know the difference. The ones that are the heroes are the monounsaturated fats. Those are the ones we hear about in olive oil and avocado and walnuts, all of those beautiful plant products that give us beautiful monounsaturated fat and some omega-3, but it's a plant-based omega-3. We also hear about saturated fat. And this whole notion that fat is bad really comes from the very strong scientific evidence that saturated fat doesn't do good things in our body. Saturated fat, it's the same calories as monounsaturated or omega-3s, but saturated fat ups our risk of disease, particularly diseases that are non-communicable. They're the diseases of affluence, as we call them, heart disease and diabetes, and even some forms of cancer. Saturated fat, if there's a bad guy in fat, that would be it. But then even within this monounsaturated, saturated fat conversation, there's also the polyunsaturated fats, which are many vegetable oils and omega-3 fatty acids. So again, getting the understanding that there are some fats that actually raise a force shield of protection against disease. And that's what omega-3s do. That's what monounsaturated fats do versus the saturated fat that actually up our risk of disease.
Amazing. So when we think about this fish and in this category of all of the different types of fish, I think it's important that you explain to us, if I'm in front of the fish and seafood case, or I'm looking at, what I want to order, and I have a lot of options on the menu, not all fish and seafood is created equal.
Either. That's exactly right. Because although we talked about the plant form of omega-3s, it's called alpha linolenic acid, and it's a short chain omega-3, and it has some positive benefits in the body. The one that most all body of research that shows the beneficial quality of omega-3s are the long chain omega-3s that are marine based, marine being sea based. So all fish contains omega-3 fatty acids, but those that have the highest levels are generally considered the cold water fishes. It's those fishes that we would even call the fatty fishes, like salmon, like mackerel, like anchovies, those beautiful oils that are in the fish. Why are they high in cold water fish? Well, because they need a little bit of a winter blanket to deal with those cold waters. They build up higher levels of those omega-3s. Other fish and seafood have them. We find them in shrimp. We find them in grouper and snapper and tilapia, but it's in much smaller proportions because they don't need to have that blanket of protection that we find in the cold water fish. Cold water fish and shellfish, mollusk as they're called, oysters and mussels, things we love, scallops, again, those are clams, all also those that are very high in those essential long chain omega-3 fatty acids.
So that's really fascinating to me. So a freshwater fish would not have as much omega-3 as a cold water ocean fish, essentially.
Exactly. Because the freshwater fish isn't eating the marine algae.
Right.
And so that's where kind of the circle of life comes in, because the reason that the fish that are saltwater traditional fish have those levels of omega-3, whether they're in warm waters or cold waters, it's because they're eating the microflora, they're eating the microalgae, they're eating feeder fish that contain levels of omega-3s as well. What they eat becomes them. Again, we are what we eat. And as you said at the get-go, that's the case for fish too. So if their diet is filled with algae that contains omega-3s, then indeed they're going to have that level of omega-3. Freshwater fish, although they're feeding off of certain kinds of algae, it's not the kind of algae that is omega-3 laden for the most part.
So let's talk about farming, because now I have a really clear idea of the choice that I'm going to make when I want an omega-3 rich fish and I'm looking at a wild fish, basically. So I know that I can feed a fish though to have more omega-3s than it would naturally have. So I want to make sure, when we look at like a river and trout and they're farming in fresh water, but they're feeding for a particular diet, we can get the omega-3s, correct?
Absolutely. So the difference between just a bass that's swimming around in a lake in Orlando, Florida, versus one that is being reared ethically and mindfully and thoughtfully to get the best of diet. Those river and trout raised in fresh water are being fed a diet that simulates what they might get if they were in the wild, but better than what they would get in the wild, because it's able to be formulated to bring the best of health to every one of those trout.
So now we're a world that's eating 64%, depending on what you listen to, little more, little less, farmed fish. And we all were looking to eat that farmed fish for the health benefits, and as much as we'd been trained. What happened then when farmed fish's nutrients and omega-3s began to go down? What was it about the way we were raising fish that made those levels go down?
So a couple things happened. One, for the most part, aquaculture was trying to use less feeder fish than what we would find in the wild. Again, for those that don't know, in the wild, salmon eat a lot, and they eat a lot of fish. They eat about 10 pounds of fish, small fish, little fishes, compared to 1 pound of the salmon that they sacrifice themselves for. In farming, the goal was to try to find a better solution for that that would be more ocean friendly, that would save those feeder fish for marine mammals, that would save those feeder fish for helping to keep the balance in the sea. So aquaculture sat on a path to reduce that, but oftentimes in the goal to reduce it, we're feeding much more grains, much more cereal grains, much more of a diet that would enable the fish to grow and to even flourish, but not have that same level of the omega-3s that we would find in wild fish. Quarry Arctic, and the reason that I just could not be more delighted to be an advocate for and to partner with, wanted to change that. They knew there was a better solution. There was a way to lower that feeder fish ratio, what's called fish in, fish out, but at the same time, up the ante on that omega-3. And they did that by microalgae, forming partnerships to do that.
And that had not been widely known. And
No.
so I want to make sure that we frame this up properly, because a decade ago, when we sat with organizations like Seafood Watch, before ASC was formed, the first thing they said, top of the list, was you cannot rob the ocean of resources in order to put something on the plate that everybody happens to like to eat.
Right.
So just for everyone to understand this, you're out fishing, you're fishing for salmon, they're eating on the bounty of the world, right? On the bounty of the ocean. And when in balance, that's great. So about 10 pounds of feeder fish, mackerel, herring, sardines, anchovies, depending on where they are, they've eaten all the little feeder fish that are then eating the microalgae, the plankton and everything that are part of what would be the little fish diet, the feeder fish diet, and so on up the food chain. We get the push from the NGOs. Feeder fish populations are 90% depleted. It's primarily from farming of salmon. You're doing more harm than good. Therefore, now we have to change this. So we cut all of that out. And basically what you're saying is we gave the salmon a carb-filled diet.
Right.
We gave them corn, we gave them soy, we gave them all these other things. They thrive to a certain extent on a meatless Monday, so to speak. But what ended up happening was we robbed them of the omega-3s. And now with
really the long chain omega-3.
Yes. And those we know now for the fish are very important. Health, fighting disease, their brain development. So as important as you think of it for yourself, we knew that fish that were being reared properly, that had those microalgae to at least 10% of their diet, then they fought disease and thrived, correct?
Exactly. Able to be that healthy fish. They were able to be strong, swim against the current. They had the texture that we would want to see, but overall, just that immunity. They were strong fish. Again, a healthy fish is also, though interesting, a delicious fish, because those same omega-3s that get laid down in that fish is what brings to us the deliciousness that we know salmon to be.
Well, the texture, because if they're not healthy, then, let's say first and foremost, we have to be good stewards of animal husbandry, period. But we're also in the farming business, and we're producing a food that has a lot of nutritive properties, and that is for, a discerning population, right? You expect it to not be overly fishy. You expect it to be somewhat firm in texture. You expect the color to be vibrant.
Mhm.
And what's amazing is when you're giving the salmon all of those nutrients and all the things it needs, guess what?
Yeah.
You get a
Yeah.
fish that is giving you all of that.
Giving you all of that. So what we like to say, delicious, yes, and nutritious, because it's giving us the very empowerment that made it a healthy fish that is being transferred to us. So in these days where we're looking for any little added boost in our immunity, any little added boost in our ability to keep our blood chemistry stable, keep our brain health, our mood at its best. We're looking to superfoods that will do that. Well, when we look to salmon, we can celebrate it because if it's a healthy salmon with the right balance of these long chain omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, that is imparting to us almost a head to toe wellness, from brain health all the way down to giving our body an anti-inflammatory power that even affects the joints all the way down to our toes.
And it is the real deal. I
Oh,
mean, it's the real deal because I can tell when I'm not getting my omega-3s. I don't have the memory. You kind of forget things more. I mean, these are things, it's not just in the strength, but it's really incredible how important it is. And I think about it with school children, for example, and kids that won't eat fish. And you've really got to think about how are they going to get these omega-3s, because they really are, it's going to have an effect even on their education and
oh,
how they are able to thrive as they're learning because of that brain health. And it has been proven. This is not, this is not kind of a funny little science. This is omega-3s at its best. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that that when we talk about Quarry Arctic, the real, I guess, eye-opening moment here was with Algae Prime. And Algae Prime is made by Corbion. It is a residual of sugar production. It is a green product. It's completely utilizing something that is a waste. And then they're able to produce something that is rich from this algae, put it into a powder form, and then that powder goes into this overall balanced diet that the salmon gets. So it's still a little pellet that they're fed, but this little pellet is rich in nutrients that really helps them thrive. Now tell me the result, because no other farm salmon's ever gotten a American Heart Association heart check seal.
ever. And it's because it's that essential balance. Back to the way I would work with an athlete and develop just the right balance of nutrients for them, how much good beneficial carbohydrate they should eat versus protein versus fat, and particularly omega-3 fatty acids. I would have a very specific diet prescription for them, knowing that if they're consuming that, they're going to have the very things we're looking for them to have: energy that lasts as long as their days last, an ability for muscle recovery, all the things that are so critical to an athlete. Similarly, by developing this feed, this pellet that has that exact formulation in play and well tested, because again, what we want is for that salmon to thrive. We want that salmon to be its healthiest best. So we're looking to have a feed that does that. What comes out of the water is, again, best in class. The first time that the American Heart Association has taken a look at a salmon and said, this checks all of our boxes. Not only is the fat that is within the salmon, again, what is the fat? These incredible omega-3s, the level of those long chain top gun omega-3s, EPA and DHA meet that criteria, yet lower in saturated fat, has the protein levels, the vitamin D levels, the things that salmon give us in terms of a superfood. So first time ever, American Heart Association gave that red check seal of approval. Couldn't be more delighted.
Well, it was a really interesting process because you could get it in Cheerios, but you could, but it was very difficult to get in fish. And Quarry Arctic has more omega-3s than wild. So even the wild salmon couldn't get that. And what does that mean per serving? Tell everyone what that means per serving in terms of omega-3s per serving of Quarry Arctic salmon.
So the American Heart Association and the dietary guidelines for Americans recommend that you take in 2 3.5-ounce servings, so 7 ounces or so of a fatty fish is what they call it. They don't say salmon, they say a fatty fish, which would be salmon. It could be mackerel, it could be Pacific black cod, it could be halibut, it could be trout, it could be a variety of fatty fishes, but you get that amount in to get at least 2,000 milligrams of omega-3s in a week. Well, drum roll please, what we found in Quarry Arctic is because of this very focused, almost superfood diet they were being fed, a 3.5-ounce portion alone of Quarry Arctic gave over 2,000 milligrams of the omega-3s. So it's not, you don't have to eat 7 ounces. You can eat 3.5 ounces, get that need met. But if you do eat double that, or like me, that's eating Quarry Arctic every other day, you're giving your body this incredible, incredible boost to help to build that immune system, to help to work with that brain health. And it's pretty incredible. Again, interesting. I work with a lot of clients from all walks of life, and a good number are those that are raising little ones, and their question is always, what are the first foods to be fed? And we have our little routine. We feed them vegetables, or then we feed them cereals, we feed them fruit. Well, I put salmon in as one of their very first foods as soon as they can mouth it, to be able to get that in, because of what it's doing. Up until 2, you're literally creating brain cells. It's incredible.
I think it's so interesting too, because we know that kids are hypersensitive tasters. They have to get on this diet relatively quickly, get used to the flavors, get used to the mouthfeel, and you have to do this from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about Quarry Arctic hot dogs and burgers, because this has certainly, to me, been a game changer to be able to get families to have more access to fish and seafood in a way, through a food that they're used to.
A form that they're used to, right? So I have many moms that come to me and say, I'm trying to get protein into my kids. I just need them to get something to eat, but I can't get them to eat the things that I consider to be their healthiest best. They love hot dogs. They're always a little embarrassed, to say that. But when all of a sudden Quarry has come out, this is brand new out. I mean, for those of you that are watching, don't know this yet, Quarry dogs, salmon dogs and burgers just out into the marketplace, Fulton's Fish Market. You can have them delivered straight to your door. What it gives is that incredible omega-3 packed, long chain, brain building omega-3 packed salmon in a familiar form. So you use it just like a hot dog. It has that same kind of crack that you would get with a hot dog. You can grill it, you top it the way you normally would. Same with the burgers. Again, a familiar form. And one of the things that I find that is so incredible with kids, what we call Quarry kids, is that they love Quarry salmon because it has such a mild, beautiful flavor. They're not getting that fishy taste that they sometimes complain about not liking. Instead, they're getting something that is just delicious. I've not yet had a kid that has tasted even the salmon itself, but definitively the dogs and the burgers, that doesn't say, could I have another?
Well, and you think about, this, it is not only so omega-3 packed, and low in fat and delicious. I mean, it really is such a unique opportunity. But the fact that you can grill it, put it on a bun, have it with ketchup if that's what they like. And I don't want to say that we're sneaking it in, but like in some ways, it's that beginning right? We have to have that entry point of
The
eating, yeah,
gateway.
the
Yes.
gateway, of fish and seafood. And this really does provide this in a way that an alternative meat burger or something like that doesn't, made out of all of these delicious non-GMO, and gluten-free, so non-GMO, gluten-free ingredients that you can get for this. And I think it's just so important for everyone that you could have a package of those dogs in the freezer when you don't know what to have for dinner, and you can put it on the plate, and it's something the entire family will love.
Well, and moms feel so good about it, particularly those that are concerned about issues of sustainability and issues of the planet friendly, ocean friendly processing of food, that these dogs and burgers are made from the trim of the salmon itself. It's the true no waste kitchen. So rather than that being discarded, instead it's used to make these beautiful dogs and burgers. So you're really being able to use the whole of the fish. The fish has given itself for us, and to be able to use it and respect it in its entirety, it's what I love. And again, moms love. And it's
Yeah.
really incredible. Once you finally do tell the kids that they're having salmon dogs or burgers, and I have some that they'll never tell the secret. Shh. They just are thrilled with what they're getting. But it's part of that learning model too, right? For them to understand what it is to be a real steward of the ocean and a friend of the salmon, right?
Well, and I think it's what I'm touting is that we can build a pantry, our sea pantry, as I'm calling it now, where we can build a pantry that helps really heal and regenerate our oceans while
Yes.
contributing beautiful foods into the food system. And that's the conversations that we're having at Quarry Arctic with all of these food banks, and trying to get in and get our salmon to some of these food deserts. We all need access to good, healthy, nutritious fish and seafood. We talk about vegetables, that's important as well, but somehow fish and seafood hasn't been part of that conversation until now. And especially when there's a lot happening out in the world that's attacking our bodies, and being as strong as possible, and having our foods have all the nutritive properties. And hey, guess what? While people are cooking a lot at home, we're really excited to bring this into their homes. So whether it's through FultonFishMarket.com, look next Monday, Boxed, for those of you that are, having your foods delivered home, but need them to be a little bit more economically affordable. We're doing a huge promotion through FultonFishMarket.com with Boxed. So you'll be able to stock up the freezer at a really reasonable price with Quarry Arctic fillets. It freezes beautifully. So, frozen is the new fresh. You do not have to always be going out and getting a fresh fillet. And then Quarry Kids, where we really hope that for those of you that are tuning in, that you engage the kids in these learning programs and activities, because knowing where your food comes from is something that we all need to engage more in.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these days where there's a lot of learning at home, in addition to the whole live in school, being able to bring every part of family life into a learning module, even looking at the foods we eat, where they're coming from, and what they're doing for our body and the planet.
Well, thank you, my friend.
So much fun
today, and all of this work that we've been able to do for Quarry Arctic on this journey with Alfborn Knudsen and the Olsen family. They're doing incredible work out there. Go to quarryarctic.com for more information. Look at the blog, because we've put a lot of this into the blog on omega-3s. And until next time, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.